Happy Monday, everyone. Welcome to the Cafe on Air podcast. I am Big Italy 42 here with the inaugural appearance of Christopher Ruckus at Space Jam 23 DFS. What's going on, man?
Not much. What's going on, Justin? Thanks for the huge invite on inaugural appearance. Love the introduction on there.
Yeah. Hey, I'm excited about this slate. I love slates right around 6 to 8 games. We got 7 tonight, so should be an exciting one. I'm going to give you a quick rundown here of the Vegas odds. We got Boston at Charlotte. Charlotte a 3-point favorite, 194.5 point spread, or 194.5 point total here. Michael Kidd-Gilchrist is out. We've got Al Jefferson looking unlikely to play, but nothing official there. Moving on to the Lakers at Philadelphia. Philadelphia, the 70 Tankers, 4.5 point favorite, 192.5 point total. So just a battle of two teams that couldn't care less about winning this game here. And Houston at Toronto. Toronto 2-point favorite, 206.5 point total. This is a game we're going to want a lot of exposure to. Obviously, we'll get to that here in a minute. Milwaukee at Atlanta. Atlanta 7.5 point favorite, 193.5 point total. Obviously, inherent concerns with all their starters sitting. They all sat last time. You think they'll all probably be back, except for maybe Jeff Teague, still with that ankle injury. So some concern there. Maybe some Dennis Schroeder. Utah is a 4.5 point favorite at Minnesota. Just 184.5 point total there. And not a whole lot of fantasy goodness there. Utah's great defense against Minnesota. Maybe they have 8 players tonight. It's going to remain to be seen. Maybe they have to call someone again, get them on a bus so they have enough players to compete. Sacramento at Memphis, 197 point total. Memphis favored by 8. And Phoenix at Portland, 201.5 point total. 8.5 point favorite for Portland. So we're going to go ahead and kick things off here talking FanDuel and DraftKings. As we do, top of the order here at the 1, a.k.a. the point guard position. And I'm going to kick things off here, send them your way with Damian Lillard at Phoenix. $8,400 on FanDuel, $7,900 on DraftKings. Second highest total on the night, going to be matched up with Eric Bledsoe, who, as we know, a fine athlete, not exactly a lockdown defender. So Damian Lillard coming off of 2 really, really subpar performances. Are you looking at Damian Lillard at all tonight?
Yeah, Damian Lillard definitely going to be on the radar tonight, especially with Bledsoe. He played last night. Lillard coming off some rest. 2 subpar performances. Yeah. People aren't on him. They're not on him. He's not playing well right now, but it's NBA. One day you're not shooting great, next day you're fine. He's a good player. Good play. Don't feel free to lock him in.
Yeah, and he's got huge upside, and coincidentally, he's the most expensive point guard. We usually have one of those elite guys tonight, but definitely some cheap value to be had here at point guard position. Another guy I want to talk about here, Kemba Walker, going up against Boston. He's $7,500 on FanDuel. On DraftKings, he's got an even better price there, $7,400. So Kemba's been kind of inconsistent. His shot hasn't been falling most games, but still getting right around 30 to 35 fantasy points. So Kemba Walker on my radar. How about you?
Yeah, Kemba Walker's on it. Probably not going to be paying up for point guard as much tonight. I like a lot of that mid-range value. I think Kemba's good play. Boston, he's going to be seeing probably a little bit of IT2. Let's see, who else? Bradley? Might see a little bit of Bradley.
I think so.
Probably a little bit of Bradley, too. So I'm liking Kemba. Not loving him. You're right, he has been playing pretty well. But just that price... He's creeping up there now with and his minutes. I think you can get some better value elsewhere, with that price.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you mentioned, there's a lot of guys who are cheap here at point guard. A lot of value to be had. And one of those guys, and there's a significant price difference here between FanDuel and DraftKings, Isaiah Thomas, only a few games removed from that injury, sitting at $6,900 on FanDuel, maybe a little bit pricey for a guy who's still not even playing 30 minutes. But $5,800 on DraftKings makes him a nice tournament play tonight for me.
No, completely. So you hit on the main thing with IT2, his minutes. I mean, if that guy's getting 30 minutes, he's a huge value tonight, but he's just so inconsistent with his minutes. FanDuel, I'm shrugging him off, probably not touching him over there. But DK, on a huge tournament night over there, I think he makes for a fine tournament play. What price range? He's with a Jordan Clarkson. Who else over there? Jordan Clarkson type price, Jeremy Lin. When I say IT2, Clarkson or Lin, it makes sense. Makes sense.
I mean, he's a high usage guy, volume shooter, good scorer. So, really the only thing going against him here minutes. So, All right, elsewhere at point guard, you already mentioned Jordan Clarkson. He's another guy with a nice discount, 6,500 on FanDuel, 56 on DraftKings. So we don't really need to tell you how good the matchup is against Philly. Obviously, they give up a ton of points at the point guard position and at the shooting guard position, really everywhere but down low where Nerlens Noel playing great defense. So I think he makes for a fine play. And Jeremy Lin with that sinus infection, he looks like he's questionable. I would anticipate he probably plays, but he did sit out yesterday, so monitor that situation. But obviously if he sits out, then Jordan Clarkson gets a huge bump.
And I mean, just talking about that, Clarkson, so, a little bit overpriced on FanDuel, 6,500, 5,600 on DraftKings. Love the price over there. And let's remember, the coach, he wants his young guys to get exposure right now. We benched Boozer and Hill last week. I like Clarkson a lot tonight. Honestly, I might put him from a value aspect on DK as possibly my number one point guard of the night against Philly. I'm going to say it tonight. Jordan Clarkson, look out. He's a young stud. I'm not too sure who's going to try stopping him. But lock and load Jordan Clarkson on DK for Space Jam tonight.
Yeah, I like that call. I mean, he's in a good spot, and especially if Jeremy Lin sits out. I mean, he's got great upside. We saw it a couple games ago. Had a career performance, and he's playing great basketball right now. So,
and then my also one other sneaky pick for DK point guards. A little expensive on FanDuel, 4,900 on FanDuel. DK 3,900. Ray McCollum. Against Memphis, I get it. Memphis has this great defense that everyone thinks. Maybe not as great as we might all believe. Average against point guards, Mike Conley. Look at Ray McCollum for cheap tonight. 3,900, 30 minutes locked in. I like it.
Yeah, and he's not going to need to do a whole lot. And Rudy Gay's struggling a little bit right now with coming back from his illness. So maybe he takes a couple extra shots. But, I mean, really don't even need much of that price. He got big upside built in. So
I mean, if you're the Grizz, who are you going to shut down? DeMarcus Cousins, Rudy Gay, or Ray McCollum?
Yeah. I'm
not huge on, we've got to shut down Ray McCollum. So I think he's going to get some nice looks tonight. Probably Boogie gets some double teams down low, some open jumpers, 3,900. I mean, I like the Clarkson, and plugging and Ray McCollum on your utility or guard spot on DK would be a nice start.
Yeah, I don't blame you there. That's a solid call. Obviously, if Jeff Teague sits out, we don't need to tell you Dennis Schroeder, I believe is how you say it. It makes for a great play. 5,700 on FanDuel, 5,600 on DraftKings. So he makes for a great play. If Teague's out, he's going to be a popular play. So make sure you get yourself some exposure there because you're going to want it, especially against Michael Carter-Williams on the other side. So anybody else you like at point guard?
I'll say this as just a quiet pick. No one's going to play. He's super consistent. Same game, Memphis-Sacramento, as Mike Conley. Ray McCollum he's not a great basketball player. Mike Conley's a good point guard. I mean, he struggled with injuries this year. He's 5,800 on FanDuel. He's a starting point guard against Ray McCollum. Let's say that once more. Yeah. A starting point guard against Ray McCollum. 5,800. I don't mind the play. I think he'll be low owned. Like I said, Jordan Clarkson's more than him. Kemba's more than him. He's the same price as Jeremy Lin, essentially.
Yeah, and Sacramento's been giving up a lot of points at point guard position as well. So definitely a nice call.
Yeah, just a little pick there.
Yeah, absolutely. Memphis guys tend to go under the radar a lot, so I like that a lot. Going over to shooting guard, we've got the obvious top option here. Really the top option on the entire slate, considering the tough matchup for DeMarcus Cousins. Are you paying up for James Harden tonight in the highest total of the night against Toronto?
So here's I think you almost have to. We've got no Dwight Howard. We've got no Terrence Jones, Monty Eunice. I mean, he's a huge play, huge upside, and there's not a ton to spend on tonight. James Harden. I mean, it's James Harden.
Yeah, and I mean, especially on FanDuel where you have to play two shooting guards. Shooting guard is the thinnest position that I have listed here, not a whole lot of options that I like. So it's another one of those scenarios where you got opportunity cost. If you try to fade James Harden tonight, he goes for 65 fantasy points. Good luck making that up elsewhere at shooting guard because there's not a lot of other guys with anywhere close to that upside.
Yeah, no, completely. I mean, if we're looking elsewhere, probably my next one, value-wise, DeMar DeRozan's price is creeping up there. I don't mind him as much on FanDuel. Especially no Lowry. You're going to have probably Beverly guarding Grievous Vasquez. DeMar DeRozan's probably going to be forced to take more shots. It's interesting how they'll defend Harden as well. If DeRozan's chasing Harden around, he's going to have weak legs, and that jumper might not be falling. But like you said, it's a short shooting guard position for tonight.
Yeah, and actually even better, Patrick Beverley's still going to be out with
That's right.
that ligament injury. So even better.
Completely forgot about that. I don't know how I forgot about that, but yeah. So DeRozan, I don't mind DeRozan at all. And then obviously, who else do we have to talk about? Mr. Bledsoe.
Eric Bledsoe, yeah.
His price. What? Go ahead.
He's got great upside there. I mean, against Damian Lillard, who has given up some enormous games recently to just pretty much everyone that he's faced has just had their way with him recently.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm a little, I don't want to say concerned about Eric Bledsoe, but I don't know what's going on with him lately. 2 games, he's not playing well. I've watched. I know he was not feeling well the other night. Watched him last night. It looks like the Morris twins have just absorbed a ton of usage in that offense. I don't know, really, to be honest, what's going on. But Eric Bledsoe is going to be a fun play tonight. He's a little bit pricey where if I'm paying $8,200, $8,300, I'm probably just going to want to move right on up to Mr. Harden.
Yeah, I don't blame you there. Bledsoe really struggling from the field. Looks like 10 for 32 over his last 2 games. So a big upside guy, but his floor is pretty low for a player in that price range. Looks like right around 25 fantasy points. So risky, but significant upside if he gets going in that game against Portland.
Agree. I mean, if we're talking, we've talked this position's tough tonight, and Tony Allen, I believe, is doubtful as of this right now.
I saw questionable, but I think he's on the wrong side of questionable, so probably pretty close to doubtful.
So I mean, right, we've got Courtney Lee, min price on FanDuel, 3,200 on DraftKings. Should see probably 32 to 34 minutes tonight. For min price at a pretty weak position, I don't mind it. Ben McLemore isn't a elite basketball player, to say the least.
No, worst in the league against shooting guards this year.
Yeah, so Courtney Lee, he makes for a nice salary, savings with possibly partnering him with James Harden.
Yeah, I like that call. Also, if you want to go cheap, assuming that Kyle Lowry's out, and it looks like he will be, sweet Lou Williams, sitting there under 5K on both sites, $4,800 on FanDuel, $49 on DraftKings, and we know that he's got significant upside. Obviously, very scoring dependent, but I mean, the guy shoots lights out, and when he gets hot, he's got enormous upside under 5K.
And then here's your GPP play for me. I don't believe he'll be highly owned, mainly because of his price and matchup. But Mr. Giannis in Milwaukee, who will he be guarding, and who will be guarding him?
Oh man, that's gonna be a tough one there, because I mean he's so versatile. I mean he's played all 5 positions this year, so it really depends on who Atlanta actually decides to let play today. Really.
Exactly. So I'm thinking, he can make a nice GPP play where he might see some Corver. Obviously take him down low. If he gets Millsap, he can't guard him on the outside. So Giannis can make for a nice play. Obviously blowout potential, all of that. But if Atlanta rests, Horford or maybe just 1 or 2 players, I don't mind, plugging Giannis in a couple GPP lineups.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's got great upside. The guy can do it all. So even when he's not putting up big scoring lines, he really does well. So I like that call as well. Elsewhere at shooting guard, there's not a whole lot that I like. I mean, if you're an Aaron Aflalo fan, you go ahead. I'm not chasing those points. He had a hot game last time, but other than that, he's been nothing short of terrible since coming over to Portland. So that's a pass for me. How about you?
Oh, complete pass.
Yeah, completely agree. All right, moving on to the 3. Small forward here. We've got the most expensive option, at least he is on FanDuel. You've got Rudy Gay sitting at $8,200, $7,500 on DraftKings. He's not playing particularly well right now, and there's now rumors that he could end up sitting a couple games for some rest. Obviously, the Kings nowhere near playoff contention in the Western Conference, so I'm not saying tonight will be that night, but I don't think tonight's the night to pay up for Rudy Gay.
No, I completely agree. I mean, looking at this right now, same price. Give me Gordon Hayward over Rudy Gay all day. Not even a question. But, tonight it's mid-range, that low to mid-range at small forward for me.
Yeah, and I mean, Rudy Gay pretty much struggled with his shot recently as well. I mean, 2 for 12 from 3-point line or 3-point arc over the last 3 games. He's really he's still scoring an okay amount, but I mean, not as below his season average. And if he doesn't have that upside, I mean, he's really tough. Maybe you could throw him in a tournament on DraftKings, but I don't see any reason to play him much on FanDuel.
No, not at all.
I do like that Gordon Hayward call. Obviously, Minnesota, a sieve on defense against everyone. I mean, Gordon Hayward shot 4 for 16 in his last game and still had 36.75 fantasy points on DraftKings. So another one of those guys that can really stuff the stat sheet even on a poor shooting night. So you got to love him. Elsewhere, you've got Andrew Wiggins sitting at $6,800 on both sites. I don't love the matchup there tonight. I mean, he's finally starting to score again like he was earlier in the season, and he's been not very scoring dependent, but for a while there he was, and his value was just awful. But now you look at it, 20, 13, 22, 27, 31, and 20 real points. So finally getting that offensive game back on track. And I think he's an okay play tonight, but I'm not going to have a ton of him.
Yeah, I mean, he's scary for me mainly because he's going to see Hayward on defense. And then, if he's going to the hoop, he's going to see Gobert and Favors underneath. So he's going to – let's see what the Kansas Jayhawk is made of tonight. He's got a tough matchup, especially with not a lot around him. So I'm not – like you said, I think he's a fine GPP play. I don't think a lot of people are going to be on him. But $6,800 for that price, that matchup, it's GPP for me.
Yeah, and in a by far the lowest total of the night. And, I mean, the only thing Andrew Wiggins is going to get is minutes. So that's the one thing he's always got going for him. But, yeah, I mean, it's a lot of negatives going that way as well. But a little bit cheaper, and this is DraftKings specific, obviously. He's a power forward on FanDuel. We're going to tell you this one time, and go ahead and just listen and do it. Play Josh Smith. You have to play Josh Smith. He's playing huge minutes. Moda Eunice is out. Terrence Jones is out. Dwight Howard is out. And he's still cheap, $6,500 at small forward on DraftKings and $6,000 at power forward on FanDuel. So go ahead and lock in Josh Smith and then move on elsewhere. You agree?
I completely agree.
Yep. All right. That was an easy one. Next up, Trevor Ariza, $6,500 on DraftKings. On FanDuel, he's sitting at $6,200. So his price creeping up there, but he's been tremendously consistent as he always is at small forward. It's kind of like you can make the rest of your lineup. If Ariza fits, you just plug him in. You expect 25 to 35 fantasy points. And especially, once again, all those injuries of Houston going to help him out as well. Highest total of the night. You got to be a fan of Trevor Ariza.
Yeah, Trevor Ariza. I mean, you're plugging him, Corey Brewer. Those are two names that I say. I then cringe, and then I say, okay, we have minutes to be given tonight. Both those guys seem a lot scarier than they should be tonight, given the injuries in Houston. So, and also, I feel like Toronto has this image of being this really tough defensive team, mainly because at the beginning of the season they were playing well. Not really scared of the Toronto defense tonight. So yeah, Ariza and Brewer both for me from that game. And then also from that game, which I don't think he will be highly owned, but I think that he could produce in large for you, is Terrence Ross, who's 3,700 on FanDuel against Houston. I'm guessing should see around 30 minutes. He's a hot shooter. He's someone he's gonna get you some boards, probably a steal or two. If he catches fire in that game, he could pay big dividends. 3,700 on for small forward, close game. I mean, I like him a lot. Yeah. I feel really comfortable rostering Terrence Ross tonight.
Yeah, and that's a good find. I mean, especially given that price. I mean, it's pretty much all upside because he's not going to kill your team at that price if he gets you 15 fantasy points, even 10 to 12. Not going to be the end of the world there. So I like that as an upside play, the cheap upside. That's good.
And that's only our asterisk. No Kyle Lowry.
Yeah. Which it seems like he'll be out, but obviously we're waiting on official word there. So we'll see there. Gerald Henderson, someone that I really like tonight. Small forward at $5,700 on FanDuel. DraftKings, as I'm sure many of you know, he's listed as a shooting guard, which is what he actually is at $5,600. And already mentioned Michael Kidd-Gilchrist out. Looks like Al Jefferson will probably not play. He looked awful in the last game. Only played, I believe it was 17 minutes. Yep. Seems like he's on the fence about sitting. Looks like he's probably going to be sitting. No reason for them really to risk him in this game. Go ahead and let him get a little bit of rest, which means more offensive work for Gerald Henderson. And he's been, once again, quietly playing great basketball. 29 or more fantasy points, 3 straight games. So I love Gerald Henderson tonight. Yeah, like Gerald Henderson. And then just adding to that list is I don't mind Jeff Green, FanDuel, 5K. Rudy Gay might sit. Also, no Tony Allen, it's looking like tonight. So Jeff Green, I don't mind him for 5K.
And also, if you want a flyer and you're just saying, listen, I'm punting small forward tonight on FanDuel, Wesley Johnson, 3,900 against Philly. Put him, Ross and Wesley Johnson, both under 4K to get 8K at small forward.
Yeah.
That's not a bad idea if you want to have some fun with it elsewhere.
Yeah, and I agree there. And the good thing about Wesley Johnson is, he gets big minutes. So you usually expect low to mid 30s. So at that price, he's going to have ample opportunity to pay off that tag. Absolutely. And I like the Jeff Green call. He already takes double digits in shots seemingly every single game. So maybe a couple extra shots for him as well. So I definitely like that. Elsewhere at small forward, not a whole lot to like. Obviously, we know depleted team for Minnesota. A guy that's been playing well. I don't like the matchup at all, but he's getting minutes. Chase Budinger, if you need a super cheap guy. Obviously, he's risky, but, he's locked into 30 minutes right now because they don't have anyone else to play.
Yeah.
And you and I aren't close enough to go try out and suit up tonight. So someone's got to play.
Yeah. Nope, agree.
All right. Elsewhere, you could look at P.J. Tucker. He's a guy who, he gets minutes. It's not an ideal matchup there against Nicholas Batum, who's a solid defender. But P.J. Tucker, nice cash game guy. You kind of know what you're going to get. 25 to 30 fantasy points. Rarely ever anything more unless Markieff Morris gets tossed like he did last time P.J. Tucker had a big game. But you pretty much know what you're going to get out of him. All right, moving on to power forward here, which is going to be an interesting position. Quite a few guys in decent spots. Unfortunately, LaMarcus Aldridge finally priced for his recent production on DraftKings. He was under 8K for a while there, up to 9,200. But he's going against Phoenix, who he struggled against in the first half last game, 2 games ago, or last time out, 2 games ago against them, and had a huge second half, ended up with 43 fantasy points. So LaMarcus Aldridge, obviously really expensive option, 92 and 95 on FanDuel. But as far as power forwards go tonight, he's really by far the highest upside, if you ask me. And, it's not that hard to have salary to spend, especially with no top-notch price point guards tonight. So I think you could easily fit LaMarcus Aldridge if you want him.
No, I agree. I think you'd be fine doing that.
Yeah. A little bit down from him, we've got Nerlens Noel, $7,800 on DraftKings, 83 on FanDuel, so really getting up there. But, last game, just 29 fantasy points, but still had 11 rebounds, 2 steals, 3 assists. But before that, 2 straight 50-point fantasy games plus. So he's a guy that's doing it all, playing great basketball right now. And tonight going against the Lakers and whoever the hell they decide to throw out there in that front court, not going to stand much of a chance. They're pretty terrible down low. They're pretty terrible against every position. So I think Noel, the only target, of course, for the Sixers, but a nice one at that.
Yeah, nope, agree with that. I think also someone who's really underpriced right now, he, in his past 10 games, he's had probably 2 bad games that were recent versus Cleveland and Golden State, is Mr. Zach Randolph. Sitting here, 7,300 on FanDuel, 7K on DraftKings, playing Sacramento. Gasol is going to have himself a busy night with Mr. Cousins. I don't mind Zach Randolph tonight. 7K, he's a solid player. He's going to, probably see right around that 30 minutes. And I think he's a strong play. I think he's a strong play at power forward for 7K.
Yeah, and I completely agree. Sacramento struggled with power forwards this year. And obviously you mentioned, DeMarcus Cousins got the toughest matchup there with Marc Gasol. So I think Zach Randolph may just be able to sit out there and eat against Jason Thompson, Derek Williams, whoever they decide to throw out there at the 4. So I like that. And he's been underpriced for a while, but definitely, he's in a good spot tonight. Even if that game doesn't go to the fourth quarter with him in, he could still pay off his tag with a quick double-double.
And you got it. And like we said earlier, there's something about Memphis players that they have this stigma, and they're never highly owned. For 7,300, that range, he's not going to be owned highly tonight. I like him as a GPP play. I don't even mind him for cash games, pairing him with someone like Josh Smith at power forward.
Yeah, I agree there. That's a good call. And here's a guy who will be highly owned, but rightfully so, Marcus Morris, the little brother, I believe, by a minute or 2. But he's playing great right now. Brandon Knight being in the lineup, not hurting him at all. 4 of his last 5 games over 40 fantasy points. 5,800 on FanDuel, 6,000 on DraftKings. He, along with Josh Smith, are going to be probably the first 2 guys I put into most of my lineups tonight.
Yeah, Marcus Morris. What we said this earlier. Him and Markieff right now, both playing amazing basketball. There might be a little bit of brotherly competition going on. Both getting some minutes. Markeith has always been a little bit higher stud, a little bit better of the brother growing up. And Marcus is challenging him right now. And I think that's good for Phoenix overall. And I think that's why we're seeing production from both of them.
Yeah.
So, it sounds crazy, but they're brothers. They're twins. They're the same age. It's competition. They don't want to be second best. So I don't mind either of them tonight. Obviously, Marcus's price is much better.
Yeah, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that I heard that they actually are sharing a contract where Markeith gets more, obviously, because he was the better player. But Marcus is going to be cutting into that. Maybe a little side bet between him and Markeith. Maybe if I keep outscoring you on FanDuel, you got to give me a cut of your bigger contract there.
I mean, I don't mind Marcus tonight. And I think also one player that I'm looking at that I think will be very low owned, he's a cheapie, is Mr. Amir Johnson against Houston tonight. We said it earlier, Houston's kind of depleted. They're seeing some injuries, really offensive dependent team. But if you look at Amir's last 3 games, all over 30 minutes, he's scoring almost over 20 in the last 3 games. Over his last 10, the guy's consistent. Last 10 games, FanDuel's lowest output, 15.7 fantasy points. No Lowry. Amir's got some talent. He's got game. I don't mind Amir Johnson tonight as a punt.
Yeah, I mean, he's an all upside kind of guy. I mean, luckily getting minutes now, that was usually his biggest drawback concern there. But I like that play. There's not a whole lot of cheap guys with actual upside, and he's definitely one of those. One other guy, a tough matchup, but looks like he may end up having to play big minutes. And Adrian Payne, $4,200 on FanDuel, an even better price on DraftKings. And like I said, you don't love the matchup, but $3,900 for a guy who's more than likely going to need to play 30-plus minutes tonight, despite a tough matchup. Derek Favors is questionable, so maybe he sits out and he gets Trevor Booker, and that's not a bad matchup for him. And on the other side of that, if Derek Favors sits again, once again, you've got Trevor Booker sitting at $3,700 on DraftKings, and on FanDuel, also $3,700, so he will be a popular play, and rightfully so, against a terrible Minnesota front court.
No, completely agree with you on that.
All right, moving on here to the center position. Last position on the board. And DeMarcus Cousins, way too expensive for me on FanDuel at over 11K. I mean, you can look at him in a tournament. He's obviously got the upside, but obviously a terrible matchup, which will definitely keep his ownership levels low. I just don't know he's going to be able to pay off that tag. But on DraftKings, still under 10K, $9,900. I don't mind him as a tournament play there because people will be off of him given that tough matchup. And he did just come off of a 75-point fantasy point performance against New Orleans, who is, I think, the best defensive interior in the game.
Yeah, I mean, Boogie Cousins, for me, we talked earlier. Point guard, we're not spending. Shooting guard, we've got Harden. Small forward, we've got some viable options to punt with. And, we talked earlier, that Wesley Johnson, Terrence Ross combo will definitely have Boogie Cousins and James Harden for me in it. I think that's going to give you all extreme upside. And, Cousins, he's elite. I don't think Gasol, yeah, you're a good defender, but DeMarcus Cousins is elite. And I like pairing him with those cheapy small forwards.
Yeah, and I mean, he's the best center in the game, and it isn't close. And any of you that argue with me, please prove me wrong there on DeMarcus Cousins, because he's just incredible right now. I mean, really all the Kentucky players, I don't know if you saw the other day, everyone had a big game. Even Tayshaun Prince that day. So, I mean, maybe some extra motivation, probably just the fact that Kentucky made a lot of really damn good NBA players that are all playing well right now. But, yeah, I could definitely see a huge upside there for Cousins. So, maybe single bullet type on FanDuel with that price where you punt. But, I mean, if you're playing a lot of lineups, you're going to need some exposure there because he's got James Harden-esque upside.
Agree.
Elsewhere, you've got Rudy Gobert, $8,400 on DraftKings, $8,400 on FanDuel, and had a couple down games there. People kind of jumped off the Gobert train, but, I mean, he's got elite upside. Best shot blocker in the game. It's not particularly close. And in case you were wondering, he did play the same Minnesota team last week and went for 18, 17, and 6 blocks, 52.9 fantasy points on FanDuel. Obviously a little bit higher on DraftKings with the double-double bonus. So really no one that can contend. And now Gorgie Jang is questionable as well. So it may be the Justin Hamilton show in Minnesota. And good luck with Rudy Gobert down there on the block.
No, agree. And if we're looking cheap, I'm going back to this game. I keep hearing myself say this, but Toronto, Houston. I mean, who's Houston's big men tonight?
Josh Smith.
Josh Smith. I say it again. Who's Houston's big men tonight?
Yeah, they don't have any. I mean, it's going to be rough for them down low. I mean, I guess Joey Dorsey's going to get some run, but he doesn't usually play a lot of minutes. He played 24 last game, but I mean, he's can't stay out of foul trouble. I mean, there's a pretty much 100% chance that he gets in trouble.
And what you're right. And there we go. So Jonas Valanciunas is my flyer tonight for cheap. We don't have a lot at center. Usually center, I can't decide who I want to play. But Jonas Valanciunas tonight could definitely, give you some interesting lineups. Dwayne Casey's tough. I get it. But I like Jonas tonight, especially against that front court. I just don't see a ton of people able to body with him. Boogie's really expensive. Gobert, that mid-priced. Gasol's going to be battling with Boogie. And then I'm not playing Joey Dorsey. So Jonas Valanciunas is going to be a highly owned center for me tonight, personally.
Yeah, and I really like that call. I mean, like you said, he's in a great spot. And the only drawback with him is that his minutes are kind of inconsistent. But he still does see upper 20s, very close to 30 most nights. So more than enough time to pay off that price tag. And there's really, like you said, no one that I'm looking at paying for or paying down for below him. You could look maybe at Robin Lopez, but he's got such a low floor, and he really doesn't have that much upside for me, especially in a tournament. I think he's a fine cash game play, but really not a guy that I'm looking at in GPPs there.
Yeah, and when we're talking Jonas, his last 4 games, 32, 29, 28, and 27. He's 6K on DraftKings or on FanDuel, 5,800 I believe on DraftKings. Against that Houston front court, I feel pretty comfortable, loading him in.
Yeah. One other guy I'm going to give you here, and this is obviously only if Al Jefferson sits, which he did most of last game anyway. Bismack Biyombo had a big game last time out. 31 minutes against Atlanta. Obviously, a size differential there. Atlanta, one of the worst rebounding teams in the league. But Biyombo went for 9 and 11, 31 minutes against Atlanta, almost 30 fantasy points. You can get him at 3,200 on DraftKings, 38 on FanDuel. So if I'm punting, that's the way I'm going. You can load up pretty much anyone else you want at any other position if you go that cheap at center tonight.
Yeah, and with that being said, so if Al Jefferson sits, it's this whole image that Al Jefferson is a better player than Bismack, so he's a better defender than Bismack. That's not the truth. Bismack is a phenomenal defender and also a great rebounder, so that's going to adjust if you're looking to play people from Boston. Might want to double check that just because of his ability to shot block, cause chaos, and all of that. So definitely something to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, I mean, he's an enormous guy. And like you said, much better defender than Al Jefferson. So I agree with you there. All right, that's going to go ahead and wrap things up for us today. I appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Check out all the great content we have at dailyfantasycafe.com. Check me out at Big Italy 42. Check Chris out at Space Jam 23 DFS at Twitter. I keep mixing up the end of that. But once again, thanks for hanging out with us. Check us all out, and we will see you guys again tomorrow.